It's time to experience the O on the Original Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Mark Maradei.
Pew, pew, pew. He shoots and scores. How does the force in hockey mesh? This week's guest on the Original Sports Podcast with Mark Maradei is Justin McElwee. He's a baseball fan, a self-proclaimed video game nerd, and he describes himself, or other people describe him, as a beer league team as an extreme mediocre hockey player. So with that being said, if that doesn't grasp your curiosity, his bank of worthless knowledge when it comes to Star Wars just very well may. We're going to get into changes that baseball needs to make to bring the fans back into the stadiums, his views on hockey and who he sees hoisting the cup in June. Finally, we're going to have some fun by creating an elite level NHL first and second team with Star Wars characters, describing why they fit into each position. And for our final segment, we're going to tap into Justin's Star Wars committed dedication, lifelong enthusiasm, and passion by having him tell us his top 3 Star Wars movies. And as I said to him, it can be one of those solo projects as well. So, hey, Justin, are you out there in the galaxy?
These aren't the droids you're looking for. That's my best Obi-Wan impression. Yes, I'm here. I'm ready to rock. Let's do this.
Man, I always like to start out with a little personal info. So talk about your life as an athlete.
Yes. Unfortunately, didn't make it in the pros. That's why my real gig is teaching. I'm a teacher, middle school teacher. But yeah, how did I get into sports? Honestly, for me, hockey's always been my number one. Hockey with a 1A, 1B situation would be baseball. But I was born in 87, never knew anything about hockey ever existed besides playing the old NES ice hockey game on Nintendo. The 94 strike was going on. And for whatever reason, my dad turned on. It was, I remember this very vividly. It was a Hawks Red Wings game that must've been taking place the season before. And I was enthralled. I was shocked. I'm like, this is so cool. They're skating so fast. You know, you score, the red light goes on. This is incredible. And I think like the week after that, my parents signed me up for learn to skate classes in first grade. Did those, moved on to like, you know, your learn to play hockey classes, you know, the rules and specifications, stuff like that. And then from there, I was, you know, on like a little club team doing my thing. Yeah. And just, it's something that stuck with me ever since. Yeah, I'm still watching hockey, was still playing hockey up until the pandemic. And then our league got shut down for a little while in a men's league. And yeah, that's my jam. Hockey is life for me.
Who's your guy over there on the Blackhawks? Who's your man?
This is actually a Brent Seabrook jersey I won behind me. This would have been, gosh, I want to say the lockout, but there's been so many. This would have been the 2013 lockout. Does that sound right? Whatever the last lockout was.
Either 13 or 14.
Yes. When the Hawks came back, they were doing everything they could to get fans back on board. So every single game night, they gave away a signed jersey, and somehow I managed to win one. And so had nowhere else to hang it up besides the bar. So we got it up there. It's autographed, and it's my little keepsake. So,
and I know you got a 5-year-old there. You told me all about that. Are you a season ticket holder?
You know, the last time I was a partial season ticket holder in college, actually, oddly enough. That was the dark days of the Hawks. We're talking, I think, maybe like 4,000 fans at the United Center.
Yeah.
And for a college student who had a part-time job, I could afford season tickets because they were so cheap. They were giving them away. And then unfortunately, that the next year, I think the year I graduated was the year Taves and Kane got drafted. And little by little, they kept getting better and better. And now, unfortunately, the prices are so astronomically high. I'm lucky if I make it to a game or two on a good year, you know. So honestly, I've been hitting more AHL games lately just because it's a little more affordable. But the Wolves. That's actually you're spot on. It's a little bit closer to where I live in Chicago, but there's nothing like being at the United Center, especially when the Hawks are good. It is insane. It's a once in a lifetime experience.
I'm a Penguin guy myself. Mm-hmm. We're diehards, and my son's a huge Crosby fan. But you know, we go see the Hershey Bears play. We're about an hour and 20 minutes from from Hershey Park, and that we like AHL too. Going to see the Caps down in DC is just a nightmare. It's not because of the Caps, but it's because getting in there and getting out of there is just crazy.
Yeah.
So I totally understand where you're coming from, and you're right. The prices are astronomical, but honestly, you pay what you get for with hockey.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the dudes are good guys. The experience is. I always tell people, if you've never seen a hockey game in person, all you got to do is see one and you're going to be hooked.
You're hooked.
It's the end.
You're hooked. Yeah. It's for me, it's the one sport. And I mean, I've been to Bulls games in the NBA. I've been to, Cubs and White Sox games here in Chicago. They're all good, but there's something about hockey live that is not translated to TV and where the other sports, I feel like you're not missing as much, but especially sitting up top, because that's where I could always afford to sit, seeing the play develop from behind the goalie and then, hit the blue line, the red line, and then come across into their own zone. It's incredible to see how fast it is. There's nothing like it.
I'm going to age myself for you. I had season tickets when the Pens won their first 2 cups. I was at one of those Blackhawks games in Pittsburgh.
You see, I was not quite old enough to really get involved with that. But as a kid looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I missed out on all this. Because once I was a kid into middle school and high school, and then even in college, they were, oh boy, it was, they would turn the lights off in certain parts of the stadiums where they had no seats or nobody was there because they didn't want it to see on TV that it was so vacant. So
that's insane.
Yeah.
Hey, what drew you then what drew you to hockey? Was it all the scoring? Was it the fighting? I mean, I know you played, but there's always something to keep somebody engaged in it.
I mean, for me, obviously playing since second grade, there's something about that smell when you walk into the rink, whether you're going to a game or you're playing a game, and you smell that freshly Zamboni'd ice. Yeah. And there's like a combination of like clean ice and maybe a hint of body odor. I'm not quite sure what it is, but it's magic when the two come together, but in terms of that too, like I said, there's something being there in person that TV doesn't do it justice. And I'll be honest, I think I come at this a different way, and maybe because I'm in my mid 30s, but growing up playing, I had a Sega Genesis, and playing NHL 94, which I know is like a classic game that everyone talks about, that hooked me. I learned all the rules from that. I learned all the teams, all the players. And then when my parents would, luckily take me to games, it was like an encyclopedia. Like I was hooked between the logos and the colors and the jerseys or sweaters, if you want to call them that, depending on, if you're traditionalist, but yeah, there's just something about it. It's so much faster. And I think the fact that there's, arena football had it where there's, you're always in bounds, but really besides the boards, or if the puck goes out of play, the game's not stopping. There's nowhere to hide. You need to be able to have a certain level of skill to keep up, which is definitely something I enjoy watching.
And there's not a lot of timeouts. I mean, I love that fact about hockey. Yep. We can't strategize every 30 seconds, like NBA just, to me.
Those last 3 minutes.
I don't hate basketball, but the pace of the game, it rivals baseball at times.
Yes, it does. Especially the last like 3-4 minutes when everyone's taking timeouts and fouling to get free throws. And it kind of weighs it down a little bit for sure.
So your current favorite player, who are we talking about?
Current favorite player? Gosh, I'd have to go. That's a tough one. Probably Mitch Marner. I am a huge Leafs fan on top of being a Blackhawks fan. There's something about him. I think I have an appreciation for him because obviously when I played, I would score an occasional goal and I would go crazy, but I was always more the one trying to set people up. And I really enjoyed that aspect. So for a guy that obviously he scores plenty of goals, don't get me wrong. But he's more, I've always envisioned him as more of a passive playmaker. So I think that's really why, in terms of right now, he'd probably be my favorite player going forward. And he's on the Leafs, and, we'll see if they get knocked out in the first round again, but that's a whole other story.
All-time favorite player?
All-time favorite used to be Jeremy Roenick. When I was growing up, that was the heyday of Roenick and Amante. Amante's definitely up there. Eddie Belfour's another one.
Yeah.
But I'd probably say nowadays, I grew up watching a lot of or trying to find a lot of Kings games. Granted, they weren't on TV in Chicago very often, but something about Luc Robitaille. I really enjoyed Luc Robitaille, just the way he played. He played left wing. I played left wing for a while as well. Matt Sundin is another one I really enjoyed watching. And then if we're going more modern, Patrick Sharp was a guy on the Hawks for the last, decade or so before he retired a handful of years ago. Just, a guy that could go in the corners and get things done, but also was a finesse player and could score. He had the best of both worlds. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Dustin Bufflin too. That guy was a train in some of those cup runs that the Hawks had too. So
I was shocked that he's still not in the league. I mean, he brought that tough element that a lot of teams still need. And man, for him to not be part of the league anymore, that just kind of blows me away. Luke Robitaille to me was the guy. He obviously played for the Penguins too. He would find the open ice. You hear about those guys. You talk about those guys. He'd find the open spot in the ice and score those goals. And I like that about him. I enjoyed watching him play. I actually got to meet Sundin. I think I have something signed by Sundin. Yeah, I used to own a little sports card shop, and I would get cards signed by the hockey guys. I'd give them away to the kids who came to the shop, and I kept some for myself, which are getting passed on to my son as we go forward. But I got guys like Belfour. Oh yeah, there were a lot of neat. I think one guy I met that I didn't particularly care for was Mark Messier. He was kind of a jerk to fans.
I've heard that too. I've heard, and it's surprising because you think about, that night, was it the 94, 95 cup run they had with the Rangers and how exciting that was. And, the guarantee that they were going to beat the Devils and all that stuff. And he just seemed like this larger than life persona, but I've heard that from a couple people that they meet him and leaves a little to be desired, so to speak.
Well, he was with Brian Leach when I met him, and Leach stopped. Leach was the nicest guy, and Messier went away for him. He's like, come on, don't worry about them. Just let's go.
Huh.
And that's I was kind of like, wow, dude, that's, the interesting thing about that is I had Paul Stewart on the show. I don't know, a few shows back, and he raves about Mark Messier. He's friends with Mark Messier, about the family, what good people they are. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe I caught him on a bad day.
Could be.
I'll let that go for this time. But he really was the only bad experience. And then Gretzky was one of the greatest experiences.
I've heard good things about him. That's one I would love to meet. The only one I've met a few of the minor leaguers, but I remember I met Morgan Riley, defenseman of the Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
This was the first year he had been drafted, and he was playing with their AHL team, the Marlies, and they were in Chicago playing the Wolves. And I remember I figured, you know what? No one in the stadium knows who he is because I'm a Maple Leafs fan, besides a Hawks fan. And so I mustered up the courage. I walked over and I said, hey, huge Leafs fan, would you mind signing my ticket for me? And it was before the game started. The guys they weren't even dressed. They were just kind of sitting by where the Zamboni entrance was. And he goes, find me after the game. I don't have time right now. I said, oh, okay. I said, I want to be like, dude, no, you're 19, 20. No one knows who you are. I would be kind of excited if I were him. But granted, I said weird stuff when I was 18 or 19 too, so I can't hold it against him. But yeah, that was probably the biggest name. I think I met Curtis Brown too, former Hawk and Shark too. But so good times.
Hey, what's the best game you've ever been to?
Okay. Easy answer for me. The 2010 Hawks Cup run, Nashville first series. I believe this was game 4 or game 5. I can't remember. It was at the United Center. The Hawks were in jeopardy of going down 3-1 to Nashville. And that was the game. If you remember, Hossa at the very end of the game got a 5-minute boarding call or 5-minute slashing call. I can't remember which. My memories. That. It's getting a little foggy now, but he goes to the box. They are down by a goal. There's about 2 minutes left. And Patrick Kane scores a game tying goal, at which point they had to pull the goalie. So I think they were playing 5-on-4 that whole time for that whole 2 minutes. Kane scores. The stadium went absolutely insane. At that point, granted, it was the first cup run. I had never heard it like that before. And then, the intermission to the first OT, Hossa comes out of the box. Sopel is skating around, doing his little thing around the blue line. And then he literally just tries to shoot it, passes it in right on Hossa's stick, and he just taps it in. And the place went nuts. And I will never forget. It was insane. Arguably the best game I've ever been to in person for sure.
Hossa.
Yes.
Interesting character. That's all I'm going to say. He's an interesting character.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
He was a hell of a hockey player, but he was just a character in and of itself.
Yeah. Being from the outside when he was with the Pens and then with the Wings, that was such a weird time frame. Cause looking from afar, I'm like, what is going, he goes to one team and then he loses, then he goes to the other team and he loses. And then he comes to the Hawks. And I remember he was hurt for the first chunk of the season when he signed with the Hawks, and he came back this is silly that I remember this. I want to say it was like Black Wednesday, right before Thanksgiving. It was against the Sharks, and he came back. I think that was his first game. I could be off a game or two, and he scored a goal or two. And I'm like, holy cow, this guy is, this could be like the missing piece that they need to kind of put them over the edge. And then sure enough, they went on that crazy run. But yeah, definitely an interesting guy in terms of, you could tell he was just kind of jumping around from team to team until he found something that stuck. And then ultimately, unfortunately, had to retire early too, which I still don't know that whole situation, how that all went about. But yeah, just a talented guy. That's for sure.
He seemed like disconnected in locker rooms. That's what I picked up from him. That's what I really gathered from him.
That's kind of what was interesting is whenever he would come back, for fan nights and stuff, very nice, wave, thank the crowd. But then that was it. There was no real like getting to know him, getting to know his family, wanted to keep a divider between the fan base and himself, which, I guess that's what he's entitled to, I guess. But yeah, definitely different take than other players.
That's what made him so different than like most hockey players. I mean, 90% of them are willing to give you the time of day, Yeah. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. 2 baseball teams, 1 city. Who you got? Why do you lean that way?
I am a diehard Cubs fan. Diehard Cubs fan. I will admit though, as a kid, I was on the Sox side of the rivalry because I liked the black and silver, black and white.
Yeah.
Frank Thomas, Ray Durham. I loved those guys. And then Kerry Wood's 20 strikeout game in '98. I remember I got home from school, turned the game on just because WGN out here, I mean, it was always on our house just because it was the Chicago News.
Yeah.
And I watched that game and I'm like, all right, well, that's it. I'm switching. I can't go back, So huge Cubs fan. My whole family, I was the only Sox fan at the time. Whole family's Cubs fans. So once I made that switch in like 7 or 8 years old, made the switch. And it's funny, we always talk about that out here is you get like one switch if you want to be a Cubs fan or a Sox fan, but after that, there's no going back. The rivalry, and I'm sure it's similar in, New York and maybe to a lesser extent in LA with the Dodgers and Angels, but it's very heated for 2 teams that aren't even in the same division or same league, so to speak. It is so heated. The White Sox fans have this vitriol for the Cubs fans that the Cubs fans, when they were good, granted, we're not very good right now, it was just like, yeah, we don't care, whatever. It doesn't matter. Unless we see you in the World Series, you mean nothing to us. Where the south side of the city is just irate. Anytime the Cubs get more publicity, anytime they get more PR, it's almost kind of like a little brother, big brother scenario where they're always trying to one up each other. But yeah, no, I've been a Cubs fan for a majority of my life. And I'm hoping, God, I hope this season is better than the last few because they fell off a cliff after the World Series win for sure.
Are they gonna be competitive this year with that young core they have?
I hope at least if they're not, I wouldn't call them quite competitive, but I think maybe trending in the right direction. I really like, they got Nick Madrigal from the White Sox, which was a big point of contention, trading between the city. Really like his mentality of, being a contact guy. I think he'll be a good fit. I really like Seiya Suzuki that they just picked up. I'm really excited about that. Their pitching worries me. I mean, Hendricks, I love, but besides that, Marcus Stroman, I'm excited to see. But after that, there's not much. It's a lot of. I don't want to call them has-beens because I think that's got a bad connotation. But a lot of guys that maybe need to reinvent themselves or maybe kind of find a way to come back. And if that works out, great. But I don't know. I also they have a lot of the signings they've done over the offseason are clear. If we're out of it by July or June, we're going to dump these guys for prospects and picks because they're 1-year deals. So we'll see. I have a bone to pick with the management. I'm not a big Tom Ricketts fan ever since he moved them to their own network. I'd say 50 to 60% of the city can't even watch Cubs games because the network they created isn't even available in Chicago. So, I mean, for the last 2-3 seasons, I've had to listen to all the games on the radio because I don't have access to it on TV, which is a bummer as a diehard fan. But yeah, we'll see what happens. It can't be any worse. That's kind of been my mentality that they've been lately.
Listen, man, I'm a Pirate fan.
Mm-hmm.
So you can sympathize with being really bad for a long time. I mean, there's nowhere to go for the Pirates.
it was so exciting. Granted, same division, but to see them for that small period of time with McCutchen and gosh, this is going back to like the early aughts, like Craig Wilson and Jack Wilson and all those guys. Like, hey, maybe they're going to make something of this, and then kind of peaked with Clint Hurdle, if I'm not mistaken, and then just kind of went back down. And it's a shame because
the owner does not want to spend money, man. I just saw this. I just printed this statistic. I put it out on, I think, Twitter and Facebook, that over the last 2 years, it had like all the small market teams and how much they've spent on free agents. And the next to the lowest amount that was spent was like 54 million by the Marlins. The lowest amount spent on free agents the last 2 years, the Pirates, $5 million.
Wow. That's
It.
awful.
That's that. Like, he doesn't care.
Yeah.
He doesn't care. You know, in somehow, some way, well, their attendance has dropped off dramatically.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, I can't believe baseball has not stepped in and forced this guy to spend money. But, you know, this will be the third show in a row that I've talked about the CBA, because I've done shows the last few days.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, the CBA is a joke to me.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they upped the luxury tax amount, but they did nothing with the floor. And you're still going to have all these teams who are like, I'm just going to spend 30 million this year.
Yeah.
You know, we're building with our farm team. No, you're not. No, because when those guys become good, you're moving them on and get more prospects.
Yeah. That's all it is.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was from The Athletic. It was from some news article, some sports website article. And they had a fact that it showed the Reds are spending less money now than they did in like 2005. And when you factor in like inflation and all that, it's insane. I don't understand. Granted, I know, you know, the valuations of how much these teams are worth billions of dollars and stuff, but if you're not going to put in any of your money to try and be successful, I don't really know what the point of owning a team is, besides it being just like you're rich and it's your little plaything that you get to mess around with. I don't understand it at all.
The Pirates owner is the fifth wealthiest owner in baseball.
That's the other thing that wrecks my brain. I don't understand. I don't get it.
Did you say the Reds? Is that who you said? Yeah. So the Reds, I had that wrong. It wasn't the Marlins. The Marlins were third.
Okay.
The Reds spent $54 million over the last 2 years.
That's another organization that just when they seem like and that's the funny thing about the Central Division is it is so wide open the last few years. I mean, granted, the Cardinals always kind of rise to the top, which drives me insane, but anybody could take a run at it and maybe make it with like 80, 90 wins. I should say 80, 88, 89, 90 wins, something like that. And you could really make a run, or at least get into the whole goofy wild card system and all that. But yeah, it's just like, now we're good. You know, so it's frustrating as heck. I totally get that.
Least favorite player of all time.
Ooh, for baseball, I'm going to go Alex Rodriguez. I cannot stand him. And to be honest, I had no problem with him as a player. I grew up, so obviously diehard Cubs fan, but there's always other teams you try and follow. So the Mariners were a team I really liked watching because of Griffey and Randy Johnson and stuff Edgar Martinez when I was a kid. So him coming up there, I remember him like, he seems like he's going to be a good shortstop. And then, you know, going to Texas and just that huge contract he got from Texas. And then within a few years, it was like, no, that's not good enough. I want to go to the Yankees, which whatever, if you want to go to New York, that's your thing. But the thing that drove me nuts is just his venture into broadcasting. I cannot stand him on the microphone talking. And as a podcaster, I know I leave a lot to be desired in my broadcasting skills too. Don't get me wrong.
We all do.
But just as somebody who played the game for that long, has been in the game for that long, and just some of the stuff he comes up with, and I don't know if it was the booth with him, and I think it was Matt Vasgersian, and didn't have the best chemistry maybe, but yeah, he just, that in addition to the got caught doing steroids, which in the 90s, I get everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, there's a large proportion of the league that was doing it, maybe not, who knows. I get that they're trying to kind of sweep that away, you know, but then to do it later and get caught again, that's the thing that really upset me. I'm like, you clearly did not learn your lesson. Like, I'll give you one chance to kind of like redeem yourself. That's fine. But you could tell he's got his own prerogative and, you know, have at it, whatever. But yeah, so between getting caught again and then also just his, oh God, I is somebody who only really gets to watch ESPN broadcasted games because I can't see Cubs games on live TV. It's infuriating to listen to him. He just drives me insane. I miss the old John Miller and Joe Morgan days when they were on Sunday Night Baseball. That was my jam. But yeah, least favorite definitely by far is him.
Probably like me watching Chris Collinsworth or Tony Romo do a football game.
Oh, Tony Romo has gotten way too big for his britches lately.
Oh, man, he's bad now.
I didn't mind him at first, but he's definitely fed into the ego of everybody heaping all this praise on him. Yeah. And some of the stuff, it's like, oh God, I'd rather listen to, you know, just about anybody at this point than him and Chris Collinsworth I've had enough with too. So, and
for a guy that never won shit, I liked his insight, but please don't act like you were a multiple Super Bowl champion.
No, exactly.
Troy Aikman can carry that distinction, not you.
Yes, buddy. He can. Yeah, there's a very wide spectrum between those two for sure. So
you said about the steroid steroid thing. Your opinion, Bonds, Clemens, Canseco, McGuire, Sosa, the list goes on. Should these guys be in the Hall of Fame?
That's an interesting question. If you would have asked me any time in the last, I don't know, decade, I would have been adamantly, vehemently saying, no, they don't belong. They wrecked, I shouldn't say they wrecked the game because technically they made it more exciting, but it sends the wrong message to players coming up that, you can do this and we're going to slap you on the wrist and say, oh, don't do that. To be honest though, after, gosh, this is what it's been close to 15 years, maybe since some of those guys retired.
Yeah.
I just don't have the wherewithal anymore to kind of put up this like interest in it. It's just to the point. It's like, you know what, either put them in or don't. I've moved on. It's, not that time heals all, but I almost just don't care anymore because it's so belabored at this point. Ideally, I think if you put them in a separate wing or put them in a 90s wing that says, hey, this is what happened during this time frame. The game grew so much thanks to these guys, but here's some stuff on the side you should be aware of. Now, Major League Baseball can't do anything right, so I know that's never going to happen. Right. But ideally, in a perfect world, that's what I would probably do.
I mean, I don't see how you keep a guy like Bonds or Clemens out.
Exactly. Especially Bonds as a Pirate. I mean, I remember as a kid, he was incredible.
But then he went on and like, if you saw, I know you've seen pictures of Bonds as a Pirate and you look at Bonds as I mean, like,
it's night and day.
Yeah.
It's night and day.
But it doesn't matter. He still did remarkable things. He still had to hit the ball.
Yeah.
He still had to make contact. He still had to field the ball. He still had to do all those things. Clemens still had to throw the ball. So I don't know. I have my reservations. Even Pete Rose. I mean, like, I'm kind of done with that thing.
Yeah.
He needs to be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, the all-time hit leader, like
not in the league. Yeah. Not in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. I feel like across the board, it's, I know Major League Baseball has their character clause or whatever. And I get that. And I don't know. I can't argue that. I'm sure there's some horrible human beings in the Hall of Fame right now that are just horrible, crotchety jerks. It's a tough call, and I'm glad it's not one I have to make. But yeah, I feel like I'm at the point where it's like, just put them in so we can move past this and keep the process going. That's kind of what I think where I'm at.
Part of the problem is those old writers. They just
you
you
hold
got
a
all
grudge.
These guys, you got all these old guys who are holding the ticket still to do the voting. I don't think Ortiz should have been in first ballot.
No, I don't think so either.
I mean,
no,
he didn't do. Don't get me wrong. He was a very good player. He won, World Series, all that, but he didn't do half of the stuff that some of those guys I named did.
Well, in Minnesota, he was a nobody, right? I mean, I don't remember ever hearing about him until he got to Boston, and then looking back in his career, and I'm like, where did this guy come from? Because he lit the world on fire in Boston, but in Minnesota, it's frustrating because you see a guy like him who, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed watching him play, and then you have a guy like Tim Raines who barely gets in, and I really liked, growing up seeing Tim Raines on the south side of Chicago for a little while. It's hard to balance that, where it's like, all right, this guy, maybe did it right or didn't do it right, but he had to wait his whole, the whole time frame as opposed to someone else getting in right away. And, there's a few little suspicious things when you look at him too. So,
well, I think part of the reason Ortiz was so influential because of his career in Boston was the players he had around him too.
Yeah.
They had no problem spending money. I mean, as we talked about just a little bit ago, I mean, money in certain cities is what drives those teams, and that's what keeps other teams from being successful. So, I mean, baseball's baseball. You either love it or you hate it. Just like you said, going to minor league hockey games and how much you love that, which I do as well. And I told you that my son and I go to a lot of minor league baseball games. We have a draft league team in our town. We've got the Bowie Bay Sox down the road. We've got Aberdeen about an hour away. We go to minor league games. Not that I don't mind going to see the O's play. It's cheap and it's pretty convenient, about 45 minutes. But I don't know. It pretty much like the Orioles or like the Pirates anymore. So I know what I'm getting with them too.
That's another organization. As somebody who grew up idolizing Cal Ripken, it's so painful to see. And it's the same thing with PNC Park and then Camden Yards. I've heard nothing but amazing things about both those ballparks.
Yeah.
And it's so sad that both cities, good baseball cities, and their owners just don't want to field a competitive team. You know what I mean? It's just so frustrating, especially when you look to the past when that wasn't always the case.
Not at all. Not at all.
But
all right. So you're a Star Wars junkie, huh?
Yes.
How'd that happen?
I was the perfect age for, I think it was 1997. They started the 30th anniversary. I'm sorry, 20th anniversary. Wow, man. 20th anniversary re-releases of the original trilogy. Cause I want to say New Hope came out in 77 and then they kind of kept going from there. So I want to say like 95, 96 on cable, they started broadcasting a lot of the original movies just to kind of amp up and ramp up towards getting people psyched for this. And I remember seeing Return of the Jedi for the first time on cable with my dad. I turned it on. My dad was sitting in the living room with me and I was blown away. I was like, what is this? You know, the story, the chase on the speeder bikes and then them blowing up the second Death Star and all the, you know, the Ewoks, which the less said about them, the better. But at the time I loved them. And I was just like, what? Oh my God, what is this? And I remember him, he's like, oh, it's Star Wars. How you're 10. How have you never seen Star Wars? And I was hooked. So from there, it was, you know, all the action figures, the video games on PlayStation, the bed sheets, the t-shirts, everything. I had to have everything Star Wars, the fake plastic lightsabers, which, oh my God, my sister and I beat the hell out of each other with those so many times. I was hooked. I remember my parents taking me to go see the re-releases in the theaters. And granted, the re-releases, George Lucas kind of maybe put a little too much into them that wasn't really necessary, but that experience I will never forget. And since then I've been hooked, whether it's the novelizations, the video games, the side projects, the movies. I haven't really dipped too much into the comic books, never been a big comic guy, but I'm all in on Star Wars, even to this day as a 34-year-old. So
Trust me, I feel your pain because I was around for the original releases and I saw them several times. And, most of my friends aren't like they saw them with me, but like I'm all in still.
Yeah.
Are you watching like Mandalorian?
Oh,
yeah.
So Mandalorian, Boba Fett, I've also, we did a Star Wars episode on our podcast and I broke this to my two co-hosts. I was really big, and I still am when I have time. Granted, with a newborn, it's a little more difficult. But I was really big into the novels, and there's a series by an author named Timothy Zahn. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
No.
And it continues. It's incredible. It continues the original trilogy in kind of the arc of where everyone thought it was going, as opposed to what they did with the sequel trilogy. And I highly recommend. I think these things were written in the mid 90s. Phenomenal. Like you would imagine. I told my brother-in-laws when we went to go see Force Awakens, I'm like, this can't live up to the hype that I have for those three novels, because it nailed it. Like, and it introduced all these new characters and stuff like that. So I used to hide in on campus. I'd be sitting in the quad with my textbook looking like I was studying, and I'd have a Star Wars novel inside because I didn't want to look like a complete nerd to all the upperclassmen on campus. So, but
everybody's out having a beer and
I'm
watching Justin. He's reading some Star Wars.
Reading some Star Wars books. Yeah.
Apparently that's your thing, and that's perfectly fine.
Thank you.
I want to do something a little different, a little off the wall here. We're going to put together 3 hockey lines and 2 sets of defensemen that, let's say, translate to a solid NHL squad, but we're going to do it by using Star Wars characters. You're going to give me the character and who they most relate to based on the criteria I share. So you ready to do this?
Ready to go?
All right. So the top line, it has to contain a 2-way center. Is going to get you 80 to 100 points, and his wingers can finish. One is quick and the other is dirty in the areas.
All right. For my top line, I wanted to go the what are they called? Red Squadron. I'm going Wedge Antilles on the wing, Biggs Darklighter on the wing, and Luke Skywalker at center. So we got the original 3 pilots that helped bring down the Death Star. I think Luke is definitely that top line center. He's going to play an honest game. He's going to skate hard to back check, which, oh man, back checking is an art form in itself, especially when you have guys that don't want to do it. And I think, Wedge and Biggs in the movies, they help bring down the Death Star, even though Biggs didn't make it. But, they're the quintessential wingmen. When you need them, they're going to be there to help you out, and they're going to go in the corners and get to those dirty areas when you need to. So that's my top line for sure.
I could see that easily. All right, let's go second line. Let's go. They got to contain a center who will score you about, let's say 60 to 80 points, a couple wingers who are going to go to the net and skate well.
All right. So for this one, I tried to kind of frame it a little bit. This is my second line is kind of like my bounty hunter line, so to speak. So I got Boba Fett playing center. Again, honest guys. He's going to skate back. He's going to also kind of take that leadership role when you need to play a little bit harder in the corners. And then you got Mandalorian, Jin Darin on left wing. And then this is a deep cut. So if people don't know this one, I apologize. This is my inner nerd coming out. Right wing, another bounty hunter named Dengar. Dengar's only appearance in Empire Strikes Back, I believe, when they're trying to hunt down Solo. He's, by God, I'm getting really in the weeds, like IG-88 and Boba Fett and all that. So if any of the my nerdiness is coming out here, but any of the extended fiction, I guess you could say, just about he's a real tough, he's like Boba Fett light, so to speak. So I think he'd be a good physical guy on that right wing for sure.
And unfortunately, I do know who you're talking about. So
okay, well, that makes me feel a little bit better. I'm not going to lie.
All right, so let's get down to the nitty gritty line, the third line. This is your grit guys. This is a guy good in the face-off circle, two guys on the wings who are like Energizer bunnies. Not much scoring, but they wreak a lot of hell and havoc.
All right. So for this line, my center, I wanted somebody who kind of knew the game, had a lot of grit, maybe kind of pushes everybody to play a little bit of a trap game. And that is Admiral Akbar, the Mon Calamarian himself. And then his left wing and right wing, I got Lando and Han, who maybe not the best finishers in the league in terms of being on the ice, but you can count on them to get the puck back, have a good transition game, get things going again, and rile everybody up. So that would be my third line for sure.
And those guys are close, so they probably know where each other is on
exactly.
The
There's something to be said when you play with somebody and you know where they're going to be. The men's league I played with my dad for about 10 years, and we used to always joke it was great because I knew exactly every time where he was going to be. So I think that that would fit perfect for those two as characters as well.
You guys were beer league champions, I'm going to guess.
We were a couple times. And that was, my dad would be like, oh, everybody at work heard about what I did. I'm like, of course he did. Cause you got to brag about what you do in your off time. So
absolutely. All right, let's get into some D pairings. The first D pairing must be able to move the puck, and they got to log some big minutes, man. They got to.
All right. My first D pairing, I'm going to go Obi-Wan Kenobi, not Hayden Christensen, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm going, Alec Guinness, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Okay.
And maybe not going to be able to play the biggest minutes because of his age, but a good puck moving defenseman. He reminds me of somebody like, Nick Lidstrom from the Red Wings, somebody that's been around forever, going to get you through the tough times. My other defensive pairing on this one, and this is another deep cut. I think they make mention to him in Mandalorian, but he's also in the comics and the cartoons for the kids and a bunch of the extended novelizations. And that's Grand Admiral Thrawn. He is a blue admiral. He's from like the deep reaches of space. He comes back to kind of revitalize the Empire after it's all fallen apart. And he's a master tactician. Whenever they introduce him as a character in any of the media, he's always somebody who studies whatever civilization he's going to take over, knows the ins and outs, knows their artwork, their media, just so he knows exactly how they think. So for a defenseman, you want somebody who's going to get in somebody's head and also be able to play the puck. So that's my other D pairing with Obi-Wan.
That's a top line right there.
Yeah.
That's a top line pairing. All right. The second D pairing, they can move the puck. Yeah, no problem. But they just plain hammer you if you get in the paint. They're going to crush you.
All right, I'm going to go with this one. I'm going to go Vader and Chewbacca. Vader, I just think of him on skates in that scene of Rogue One when he's taking everybody out when they're trying to get the Death Star plans off the ship. And then also Chewbacca, is somebody who is known for pulling people's arms out of their sockets. That seems like a perfect fit for the two of them on the second D pair. So
I'm seeing Erica Branson out there myself.
Yes, exactly. Maybe an early Chara, before he got a little bit too old and couldn't skate as well.
Imagine that pairing, Gabranson and Chara. That'd be sick.
That would be ideal.
Dude, your goalie's got to be big and quick like a cat.
All right. This was a tough one. I'm hoping maybe doesn't have the best form, maybe not the quickest, but in terms of just sheer size, he's going to get it done. And also, I think people would just want to avoid him because of his character. And that's Jabba the Hutt. I'm going to go with Jabba for goalie. So maybe a little on the nose with him being such a big guy, but I like to think maybe he's, we've talked about other people gambling on the games. He might be issuing some fines if people lose or, score on them. So maybe that little bit of fair in them to not score or shoot on him.
I'd love to see him go post to post.
Oh, that would be, it'd be a mess. We'll put it that way.
That was awesome. I love your lines and your pairings. That was fantastic. Hey, let's go to this. This is my final segment. It's called We Just Gotta Know. I want your top 3 Star Wars movies, and you can pick a solo project if you really want to throw a solo in there.
Okay. My 3, we'll start with number 3. Number 3 is going to be Empire Strikes Back. That used to be my number 1. Over time, I still enjoy it, but I've kind of lessened a little bit on it. I'm not as hot on it as I used to be, but still a great movie. My number two, and this is kind of a shocker to me because it's one of the newer ones, is Rogue One. That is a movie, anytime it is on cable or whatever, I will watch that all the way through. I remember my brother-in-law, we went and saw it in that scene, like I mentioned earlier, when Darth Vader shows up. He went nuts because it's everything we envisioned as a kid of what was happening before A New Hope starts.
Yeah, I liked Rogue One.
It was I'm a sucker for any type of ship to ship battle in space. So that ending scene over was it Scarif is just phenomenal. I love the way they worked in the pilots from the originals and they kind of green screened them in. Excellent. I can't say enough good things. If the sequel trilogy was anything like Rogue One, I'd be all in, but I am that's a story for another day. But my number one of all time is got to be A New Hope. I love that movie. It starts everything off. It's got a little bit of everything. The beginning's a little slow. It's more of the adventure tale. And then once you get on the Death Star, it's more of an action, there's a lot of action. And then you end with, a space battle, which that's what I go to Star Wars for, is all the different ships and stuff like that in space. So that is definitely my number one, A New Hope.
I don't know about you, but every time I watch each and every one of those movies, I learned something new. There is just so many nuances that are stuck in there that you've really got to go back and watch them. If you're any kind of fan at all, you have to watch them several times to pick up every little thing along the way.
Yeah, there's still, and it's silly to admit this, but there's movies you see where something happens in the movie or there's a line that's read and you kind of get chills on the back of your spine. That New Hope, when they begin the trench run and they're like, all right, report in and we're going in, I still get chills. And I'm an adult with a kid. I shouldn't be getting that amped up about a Star Wars movie from the 70s, but I do. It's just, it's something nostalgic. It's something special. It reminds me of my family, us going to see it. So that's definitely my number one for sure with a bullet.
Listen, it should make you feel good that there's millions and millions of people out there who feel just like you do about this. I'm actually, I know I wasn't great on Rise of Skywalker. I need to watch it a few more times, but there are rumblings of 3 more coming along down the road, which I'm okay with as long as they roll them out correctly.
Yeah,
that's all. You just got to roll it out correctly for me. Like I didn't mind when they rewound and did number 1. That did not bother me. Like
me neither.
And all those people who complained about Jar Jar and things like that, like that was part of the character. That was part of the whole growth of.
There was an arc.
Yeah. And people didn't understand that because they weren't truly into what you and I enjoy about the Star Wars, I guess, world.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Justin, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for your time. I love doing the hockey thing. That was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Good luck to you. I hope your baseball season goes well. I know what to expect from my team. I hope you expect the total opposite that my team's going to produce.
It can't get much worse in Chicago for the Cubs. So that's my motto this year. We'll see what happens.
Take care. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again to our guest, Justin McElwee. Hey, keep up with Justin by checking out his website, baseballandwhatever.weebly.com. He's on Facebook at Baseball and Whatever, Twitter, Baseball and Whatever, Instagram, Baseball and Whatever, and he also has a YouTube channel, Baseball and Whatever. Connect with us here on the Original Sports Podcast with Mark Maradei by checking out our website, apps, and all that stuff. Our website is OriginalSportsPodcast.com. Like our Facebook page, join our conversation on Twitter, reach out to us on Snapchat. All of those are OSP with MM. You can also follow us on Instagram, watch our TikToks, and check out our YouTube channel. All of those are Original Sports Podcast. Hey, feel free to let us know if you have any questions, comments, suggestions by emailing us at originalsportspodcast@gmail.com. I'd like to thank our audio engineer, Sean Ankoviak, Matt Noble, who does our voice intro. Our music is done by Ryan Benton and Preston Harper. Our social media by Will Franciscus, and our webmaster, Terry Maradei. Join us each week to experience the O on the Original Sports Podcast.